April 11, 1961, Jerusalem. A courtroom filled with silence so heavy, it felt as if the air itself refused to move. Every heartbeat in that room was waiting for one man to appear. Behind thick glass, surrounded by guards, walked a 55-year-old man with calm, almost polite steps. But he wasn't an ordinary defendant. He was Adolf Eichmann, the N4Z1ST official who designed the system that sent millions of Jews to their deaths in gas chambers across Europe. After 16 years of hiding in the shadows of South America, living under a fake name, the man known as the Architect of Death was about to face the survivors of his own crimes. Would you be able to look straight into the eyes of the man who planned the destruction of your entire family? Stay until the end of this video, because you'll hear the final, chilling words of Adolf Eichmann just moments before his execution. But before we begin, our channel Fleek of History is on the road to 1 million subscribers, and your support means everything. Hit the subscribe button, tap the bell icon, and let's bring these forgotten moments of truth to life together. The man who vanished into shadows, May 1960. Buenos Aires, Argentina. It was just another cool evening in a quiet neighborhood called Garibaldi Street. A man stepped off a bus, carrying an old leather briefcase, wearing thick glasses and a worn-out gray suit. To his neighbors, he was Ricardo Clement, an unremarkable German immigrant who worked at a Mercedes-Benz factory. Punctual, polite, reserved, but Ricardo Clement was a lie. Behind that false name was one of the most wanted war criminals on earth, Adolf Eichmann, the logistics mastermind of the Holocaust. He wasn't just another former officer. He was the bureaucrat who scheduled the trains that carried millions to their deaths. How did a man responsible for such horror manage to vanish and start a new life halfway across the world? To understand, we go back to the chaos of 1945, fleeing the ruins of the Third Reich. When the Third Reich collapsed and Allied forces closed in, many top N4Z1ST officials knew the gallows were waiting. Eichmann was among them. He fled across Europe, following secret escape routes later known as the rat lines. These weren't just rumors. They were real networks, often aided by sympathizers inside powerful organizations, including the Catholic Church and even the International Red Cross. Through these channels, Eichmann obtained false identity papers in Italy in 1950 and slipped onto a ship bound for Argentina. Under his new identity, he landed safely and disappeared. Why Argentina? Because its president at the time, Juan Domingo Perón, quietly welcomed hundreds of former Nazis. In exchange for scientific knowledge, money and connections, Argentina offered them secrecy and new beginnings doctors. Engineers, soldiers and murderers all stepped onto Argentine soil. Among them was Adolf Eichmann. A new life built on lies. Eichmann lived modestly. He worked as a factory foreman, later as a department chief. In 1952, he brought his wife and children to join him, blending perfectly into working-class Argentina. He avoided attention, avoided politics, avoided almost everything, except the past that was always one step behind. But what finally exposed him wasn't an investigator. It was love. A teenager's romance exposes a monster. Eichmann's oldest son, Klaus, started dating a teenage girl named Sylvia Hermann. Her father, Lothar Hermann, was blind and a survivor of Dachau concentration camp. When Sylvia mentioned her boyfriend's name, Lothar froze. Eichmann. That name wasn't just familiar. It was infamous. He started digging. His suspicion soon reached a brave German prosecutor named Fritz Bauer, and himself a Holocaust survivor dedicated to hunting the fugitives of the Third Reich. Bauer knew the German authorities couldn't be trusted. Many still sympathized with their former colleagues. He took a daring step, contacting the government of Israel directly. The result was one of the boldest covert operations in modern history. The secret mission, Operation Finale, Israel's intelligence service, the Mossad, launched a secret team of 11 agents. Their task, confirm Eichmann's identity, abduct him, and bring him to Jerusalem alive. Agent Zvi Aharoni, whose own family had been destroyed by the Nazis, traveled undercover to Buenos Aires. He spent weeks observing Eichmann, comparing old photos, studying his habits. Finally, he was sure. The quiet man on Garibaldi Street was indeed Adolf Eichmann. On the evening of May 11, 1960, Eichmann stepped off a bus just like any other night. But this time he never made it home. 3 agents waited in the dark. In seconds they struck. The fight was brief. Eichmann muttered, "I surrender." He seemed almost relieved, as if he had been waiting for this moment. The team kept him hidden for 10 days until a diplomatic flight gave them their window. Drugged, disguised as a sick Israeli diplomat, Eichmann was smuggled aboard an El Al plane back to Israel. On May 23rd, Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion announced to the world, "Adolf Eichmann is in Israel, and he will stand trial." The news erupted like a bomb. For the first time, a major architect of the Holocaust would be judged not in secret, but in front of the entire world. The trial of the century, Jerusalem, 1961. Inside the Beit Hayam, the House of the People, a courtroom was built specially for this trial. At the center, a clear bulletproof box holding the prisoner. Spectators from around the world came to see him, a man who appeared disturbingly ordinary. Grey suit, calm face, polite tone. He looked more like an accountant than a murderer. But appearances deceived. Ben-Gurion wanted this trial to be more than justice. He wanted it to be education, remembrance, and healing. For the first time, survivors were given voice and stage. This would not be just the trial of one man. It would be the trial of history itself. Prosecutor Gideon Hausner opened the case with words that resonated through the world. "When I stand here before you, judges of Israel, I do not stand alone. With me are 6 million accusers." And then the testimony began. Survivors described everything: the smell of burning bodies, the endless trains, the screams in the night. For many Israelis, it was the first time they truly heard what had happened in Europe. The world was watching. Cameras recorded every tear, every silence. The Holocaust was no longer a chapter in books. It became a living wound exposed for all to see. Eichmann's defense: just following orders. When it was his turn to speak, Eichmann hid behind cold logic. He claimed he was just a soldier obeying commands. "Befehle sind Befehle," he said. Orders are orders. He insisted he never killed anyone personally, that he only managed timetables and transport schedules. But the evidence told otherwise. Documents bearing his signature, meeting minutes, orders for deportations, recordings of him boasting to fellow Nazis in Argentina that he did his job with pride. He admitted he regretted not finishing the task. He wasn't a passive clerk. He was an enthusiastic participant. Witnesses recalled how, even when Heinrich Himmler ordered the deportations to stop in 1944, Eichmann defied him, sending more trains filled with Hungarian Jews to Auschwitz. His obsession was beyond obedience. It was ideology. The prosecution exposed the monstrous truth. Eichmann had planned the death of children deliberately. One witness remembered him saying that killing Jewish children was necessary because otherwise they'd grow up to take revenge. That moment left the courtroom frozen in horror. The verdict of humanity after 8 long months and 121 sessions. The judges reached their verdict. Adolf Eichmann, guilty of crimes against the Jewish people, guilty of crimes against humanity, guilty of war crimes. The sentence: death by hanging. For the first and only time in Israel's history, the death penalty would be carried out. Eichmann appealed, claiming remorse, calling himself a victim of the system. The Supreme Court rejected his plea. President Yitzhak Ben-Zvi denied his final request for mercy. Justice would not waver. The final night, May 31, 1962. Inside the Ramla prison, Israel. As the world slept, guards prepared the gallows. Eichmann refused a priest, asked for a bottle of wine, and reportedly told the guards he was ready. Just before midnight, he was led into the small execution chamber. No cameras, no crowds, only witnesses and history itself. When asked for his final words, he spoke defiantly, uttering phrases of loyalty to Germany and Austria, the countries he once served in blind faith. At 11:58 p.m., the trapdoor opened. The architect of death was gone. His body was cremated, and his ashes scattered into the sea beyond Israel's borders, so that no land would ever bear his remains. Not even the earth of his victims. Not even the earth of his victims. The trial that changed. The World Eichmann's execution wasn't just the end of one man. It was the birth of a new kind of justice. Unlike Nuremberg, held by victors against the defeated, Jerusalem's trial was personal. It was the victims judging their executioner. Their testimony became history's conscience. Through television, millions witnessed not only the facts of genocide but the faces behind it. Teachers, children, and survivors could finally speak the unspeakable. Philosopher Hannah Arendt, who covered the trial for The New Yorker, called it the banality of evil. Eichmann wasn't a monster in appearance. That was the most terrifying part. He was painfully ordinary, a man without rage, without empathy, who simply followed the rules. That made his story a mirror, showing how easily evil takes hold when people stop questioning orders, when bureaucracy replaces morality. A warning for all time, Eichmann's trial forced humanity to ask a question that still haunts us. How far would you go just to obey? He was hanged in 1962, but the evil he represented didn't die with him. It reappears whenever people surrender thought for obedience, whenever hate dresses itself as duty, whenever prejudice becomes policy. Evil doesn't always scream. Often it whispers, wearing a suit, holding a clipboard, following protocol. The story of Adolf Eichmann is not just a history lesson, it's a warning carved into time itself, because the next man like him won't arrive waving a flag. He'll come quietly, politely, efficiently. We've seen it before, and we must never let it happen again. Do you think justice was truly served that night in 1962, or was Eichmann's death only the beginning of humanity's confrontation with its own darkness? Tell us your thoughts below. We read every comment, and if you want more real stories that shook our world, like this one, subscribe to Fleek of History. Hit the bell and keep history alive with us. Stay vigilant, stay human, and remember, the past isn't gone. It's warning us every single day.